1460 WVOX.
Now back to Lynn's Warriors with Lynn Shaw on 1460 W.
Strong advocate, and today the co-founder and president of the Resiliency Foundation, the Midwest Coalition to End Child Marriage. Their mission is to collaborate, educate, and advocate for others. And although Genevieve is in the Midwest, she is very well known all across our country and works with victims, survivors, other coalitions, law enforcement, faith organizations, and, well, just about everybody all over the United States to ban child marriage. The website, Warriors, is resiliencyfoundation.com. Welcome, Genevieve Meyer, to the Warriors.
Hi, Lynn. Thank you for having me.
Oh, of course, you're welcome. I have so many good things to say about you. I can almost not get them all out there. Listen, Genevieve, it is your story to tell. But first, I want you to share with our audience just some facts and truths about child marriage, because the number one thing I get practically on a daily basis is that does not happen here. So the floor is yours. What would you like to tell us about that?
Absolutely, and that is one of my most common responses that I hear as well, and a good guide to tell if I'm getting my message out there enough of how many people during the course of a day say, oh my gosh, I didn't know that was a problem here. And I even didn't know that was a problem here until, I want to say 2015. I thought that I was the only one that this had happened to, that I just fell through some cracks. And, it was just about me. So I was astounded to learn that over 300,000 minors had been married legally across the United States just in a 10-year period alone. We're talking about 2008 to 2018. So that was really astonishing to learn how prevalent and how often it went out there. And then, of course, my heart just ached knowing, of all the people that suffered just like I did.
And probably, Genevieve, the numbers are probably higher because, it's kind of kept in the dark.
They are.
So that's what we know about. Now, Warriors,
right.
We're talking with Genevieve Meyer. Resiliencyfoundation.com is the website. Would you like to share your story, your background a little bit? It's up to you, whatever you want to talk about.
Sure, absolutely. So I was born to a single parent in Southern California. My mother suffered from significant mental illness and was frequently taken advantage of, and also not able to care for me quite a bit. So sometimes I lived at home, and sometimes I was a child of the system. And unfortunately, through most of my childhood, about every social safety net that was there to protect me, I fell through all of them. So really spotty education, suffered, a lot of different kinds of abuse, really, really rough time. And at the age of 14, I was reunited with my mother after being in foster care for a little bit, and she had moved, so it was a new town, new location. I was supposed to be enrolled in my freshman year of high school that fall, but unfortunately that didn't happen. And what happened instead is a man down the street began preying on me and behaving inappropriately towards me. Law enforcement was notified, and he was arrested and had charges pending against him. And then the most astonishing thing happened. This man convinced my mom to sign me over in marriage to him so that he would escape prosecution. Now, keep in mind, I wasn't pregnant. There wasn't like an unborn child involved or anything. He was just completely preying on me. End of story. That's the only thing there. And so, but it actually wasn't easy. So they actually had to kind of venue shop. And so California was kind of the first stop. And while there's no minimum age still today for minors to get married in California, for my particular case, they did not grant a marriage license. Also, Nevada, which is one of the highest states of child marriage, I think it's actually number one when it comes to child marriage in the country. They also did not agree to a marriage license. And then we went all the way to Utah. So, this man was determined, to capture me and get out of facing consequences for his actions, to go through all this. And this is in 1995. The internet was very new. It's a lot of work to figure this out.
A lot. And it's actually, Genevieve, that's trafficking. He was taking you from state to state as a minor.
That's exactly right.
And so we move forward. That's 1995. We know so much more right now. I want to ask you, Let's, before we continue, share the good news that happened last week out of the state of Massachusetts. Tell us about that.
Yes, Massachusetts became the 7th state to ban child marriage. And when I say ban child marriage, that means 18 is the minimum age to get married with no exceptions. Because 18 really is kind of the minimum age for people to get married on their own in many states. But what you have is these sneaky exceptions, and by the time there's an exception for pregnancy or an exception for parent, coercion or permission, all these different exceptions, by the time you get down to it, in several states, there's actually no minimum age to marry, and you have 10-year-olds marrying adults.
A lot of loopholes in there. That's what people don't understand. And I want to share that besides Massachusetts, my home state banning child marriage, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Rhode Island, and Minnesota. So we applaud all of them. I don't think people understand the trauma that goes into all of this for a child. I don't think they understand the psychology behind all of this. But I'm skipping around a little bit. But how do you help, for instance, with the state of Massachusetts? How did you participate? What did you do to help this along?
Sure. So for the state of Massachusetts, for me particularly, it took 6 years for Massachusetts to end child marriage. So they actually started the process a little bit before I became aware and even joined the advocacy fight. However, once I did learn about it, I joined the coalition there, and I offered written testimony based on my experience and the trauma that I had suffered and why no other child should go through what I went through. And then I also offered emotional support as well as logistic support. So, survivors are really leading this movement, and we stand there and we bare our souls and the most painful, traumatic parts of our lives in hopes of, legislators creating better policy and putting an end to this, because one child being abused like we were is too many. And, it's not easy to do that. But at the same time, while we're, resolving our past trauma, sharing our stories very publicly, we're also learning the ropes of the legislative system.
Right.
How do bills become laws? Who do you need to talk to? What's the difference between the House and the Senate and, all of that? And it's a very steep learning curve because you have a very small amount of time and it moves quickly. So I also offer more logistical support in that way of, when we have a survivor that reaches out and says, this is my state, this happened to me in the state, I want to join it, I want to testify, but I don't really understand how this works. And then also, after we testify and we spend hours, sharing our stories and tears and whatnot, providing a place for us all to kind of come to and regroup and get support from one another is also something that we offer.
It's so wonderful. I mean, you're building up this survivor coalition.
It's a community.
And it is a community. It's a tribe, as we like to call it. Warriors, we're talking with Genevieve Meyer, ResiliencyFoundation.com. Genevieve, tell us about your foundation.
So our foundation, we do offer direct support to survivors, not as much, though. Mostly what we focus on is education, advocacy, and research. So we have been part of over 12 research studies to study child marriage and make sure that victims are counted. Just because we're not counting and we're not, measuring the numbers doesn't mean the problem is not there. So that's another area of advocacy that we need to look at, is making sure that we are capturing those numbers so that we can then make good policy changes accordingly. We also work with a lot of anti-trafficking task force. So in my area, Northeast Indiana, I'm a co-convener for the Northeast Indiana Anti-Trafficking Network, and then I also work with the state anti-trafficking task force. And so we work with them on existing trainings on human trafficking, and we point out how human trafficking and child marriage so often intersects. And then we also give them, toolkits and fact sheets so that they can take back to their organizations and better respond to it. I think a fabulous example is Indiana, to my knowledge, is the only state where the Department of Children's Services has had really extensive training on identifying and supporting survivors or potential victims of child marriage and responding to those situations in ways that keep the child safe. And so that's been phenomenal. No child should have to go through that to begin with, but if we can, if we're able to step in and rescue that child before they are married and taken to bed or raped or, suffer from, pregnancy on their young bodies, that's really the goal there.
I mean, it's shocking.
It is.
When you say Indiana is the only one It is shocking news, and I understand. I share with you, I only found out, Genevieve, about all of this, I want to say going on 3 years ago, that this was occurring in the United States. So it's something, if you didn't know, going back, I didn't know. People just don't know. What do you need from the public? Obviously, donations are always great, but what are you looking for from the public? How can they help?
Sure. So a few ways that you can help. I mean, donations are always great, and you can do that via our website, and you can even be a monthly subscriber if you would like to continue to support our mission and our support groups for survivors. But also having conversations with your neighbors.
Right.
Take a look at your state, see what the laws are with your state. There are several states where no legislation has been introduced to end child marriage in these states. So, we need representatives to write bills, to sponsor bills, and to champion those bills to get them done. So if your state hasn't done anything to address child marriage, then you need to be reaching out to your state representatives and demanding to know why.
Take action. Why, Genevieve? Why is this is a loaded question. Why is this so tough? We're talking about children, minors. Why? I keep asking myself, why is this so hard for everybody to understand?
I wish I had a good answer for that. I don't. In our country right now, there are a lot of other social issues that are going on. One of them, being that, the Roe v. Wade. And I find it interesting